You want the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
You can't handle the truth!
Well, we're giving you the Michigan Sports Truth Week in Review, the show that reveals facts, truth, research, and statistics and never messes around. We lay down the entire truth about everything regarding your Detroit and Michigan sports teams, no matter if it's good or bad. No junk, no entertainment, no homerism, no coddling, no pop culture, no opinions, no shilling, and no fluff. Head over to our website at MichiganSportsTruth.com and like our Facebook page, The Michigan Sports Truth. The hosts of the Michigan Sports Truth podcast do not take any suggestions or criticism from any member of its audience on how it should be run. It is up to the host to decide what they want to cover. They also do not intend to be any amount of popular in any way, shape, form, or fashion. Additionally, the views of the audience, right or wrong, do not reflect the actual truth revealed on this program.
Episode 304 is in session. The Week in Review of the Michigan Sports Truth podcast on Spreaker, SoundCloud, and iHeartRadio. Taylor Phillips and Buck Geno, welcome back. Buck Geno? So, let's get down to it. Got a lot to talk about. Actually, just a handful of topics to discuss. Let's start with the Lions here.
Touchdown, Detroit Lions!
Matt Patricia, the new head coach of the Detroit Lions, is ranked number 2 in NFL head coach hirings in 2018 from NFL.com. Now, despite what most fans think, that's what's actually true. NFL.com got it right.
Well, I mean, we can judge the rankings all we want. They thought that Doug Pearson was the worst hire back when he was hired as the head coach of the Philadelphia Eagles, and we saw how that progressed. So you have to take those rankings with a grain of salt, obviously, but you never know what those are going to be like until they actually get to play the games and see results based on all the other hirings around the league. I think that you have to look at who the Lions wanted, who they got, and those two people are the same in Matt Patricia. So Bob Quinn got the guy he wanted, and they're going to hang their hat on Matt Patricia for the next 2 to 3 years at least, and until we start to see what happens as far as results on the field. These rankings are fun to do, and they're fun to talk about, but like many rankings, those can be subject to change. And so when I look at those rankings, it's kind of hard to say that the Lions could have done any better because their main and pretty much only target was Matt Patricia, and that's who they hired. So take those rankings for what you will. I tend to agree with NFL.com on a lot of those, but again, until we see those coaches in action, it's going to be difficult to say what those hires actually mean to each of the teams that did the hiring.
Yep, absolutely. And then we got Titus Young. Remember, he wrote his story about having a bipolar disorder. He was denied parole from an ESPN report. So not a lot of luck for Titus Young, to say the least.
No, and we talked about that story a lot more at length earlier, a couple episodes ago. And yeah, the first hurdle is he's got to get out of jail before he's able to even start to think about making an NFL comeback. And being denied parole, it doesn't surprise me, just because of the fact that whatever's going on in his life, they feel like putting him out back to society right now probably isn't the best thing for him. And that being said, the article was pretty interesting to read, but that's the first step, is doing whatever time he has to do before he even thinks about making a comeback in the NFL. So a roadblock for him for sure, but not something that is shocking simply because of the history that he had, and also the fact that in California they tend to be a little bit more stringent on that type of thing. So we'll see what develops with that. Haven't heard anything about an appeal or any extension or anything else like that. So at this point, that comeback trail is right now kind of set in traffic.
Yep. Mm-hmm. And as we transition from pro football to college football,
Touchdown, MSU!
Amid the sexual assault investigation, the Spartans of Michigan State have extended Mark Dantonio, the head coach, to a 1-year extension. The university that's what the university has decided. That they didn't give him a long extension. If you're hoping for something for some punishment to go down, to be handed down, well, they only give him an extension, but it's only for 1 year.
Yeah, I mean, his current contract was set to expire in 2023, so this extension of a year, really, in my mind, sort of a gesture that is designed to show confidence in him and his handling of the situation so far. As events will play out, doesn't matter what his contract status is at this point. And as far as the investigation goes, I think that MSU just wanted to be able to say that they feel that Mark Dantonio is their guy, and he will continue to be that guy for a while. And the 1-year extension is simply just kind of a vote of confidence for him in the recent events that have gone on in East Lansing. So, good for him. He gets another year on the contract, which just means that if he is terminated in between now and then, he'll be paid a little bit more due to that, probably. So I think that for the long play, obviously, it just gives him more security, and the short play is to show a little bit more confidence in him by giving him that extra year and showing that they do indeed value his contribution and, to this point, his behavior and his contribution to the investigation so far. And with all the things that are coming down now, as far as ESPN's outside the lines reports and other things are coming across, it's looking to focus a little bit more on the basketball team than it is the football team at this point. Not a lot has been said about the football team past the initial report, so maybe they're just looking at that and thinking that that storm has passed and having to focus on the basketball team a lot more. So, like I said, it's something that seems to be more of a symbolic gesture than anything else.
Right. So that says it all. Now we transition from Michigan State football to Michigan State basketball.
Valentine for the win!
Spartans just absolutely dominate the Minnesota Golden Gophers at Williams Arena, 87-57. They almost tie the record in 3-point shooting. They finished with, I think, 14 threes, but freshman Jaren Jackson, a career high, 27 points on a career high, 5.8 3-point shooting. Yikes. And then they fell behind by 27 points, as many as 27 points, and they came back to beat the Northwestern Wildcats in Evanston 65-60. It's just an amazing team for Izzo.
Excuse me. Boy, I mean, that game you thought of after the first half, it was over. Northwestern almost put up a half a hundo on them in the first half, and Michigan State was struggling defensively and offensively. And during the second half of that game, I mean, it was a completely different team held Northwestern to the lowest point total in Big Ten conference history. That was something that I saw on Twitter today. So I don't know exactly how far they're going back, but 11 points for the Wildcats in the second half. They didn't score for almost half of that second half.
Wow.
And Michigan State just kept coming and coming and coming, and Northwestern just didn't have the answer for them. And to put themselves down by 22 in that first half and then to respond the way they did in that second half was amazing. And not only because Northwestern's inability to score the basketball, but also the fact that Michigan State offensively seemed to find its rhythm early and use that momentum to carry them to a huge comeback win. You look at that game in the first half, and you're looking at Northwestern, who is at 15-12 going into that game. They need everything they can get to try to make a bubble run in the NCAA tournament. And had they been able to close that out against the number 2 ranked Spartans, put a big feather in their cap, and they could have maybe used that as a springboard for the last week of conference play and into the Big Ten tournament. Instead, just a house of horrors for them in the second half, and they end up losing that game by 5, and Michigan State keeps its record at where it's at right now, 3 losses instead of 4. They go to 26-3 overall. And I don't see them losing that number 2 ranking. I don't know if they're going to be able to get to number 1 this week. I think that Tom Izzo would probably prefer they stay at number 2, because last time they went to number 1, the roof kind of caved in on them with that mini 3-game stretch where they lost 2 of the next 3. So just an amazing comeback win for them, a big effort for them, and that's going to give them some momentum here coming into the last week of conference play. Really, a number 1 seed now firmly in their sights. All they have to do is get past Illinois and Wisconsin, which shouldn't be a big issue for either of those games. And going into the Big Ten tournament, if they are able to win those last 2 games, they should be the first seed in the Big Ten tournament. And I don't know if they need a long run in the Big Ten tournament to get a number 1 seed, but certainly that win against Northwestern is going to help them, because had they lost that game, I think they would have needed to get to perhaps the semifinals or even the finals to be considered. It's kind of strange to say that the number 2 team is in danger of not getting a number 1 seed in the NCAA tournament, but that's how college basketball has gone this season. People almost looking for reasons to not inflate teams' rankings and to not put them on pedestals that they shouldn't be. So Michigan State now firmly in control of its destiny, and we'll get to Michigan's win today a little bit, but that win over Ohio State for Michigan really helps Michigan State as far as the Big Ten conference race goes. So now with Michigan State firmly entrenched in the Big Ten and perhaps now in the NCAA tournament, they can't have a bad loss on the way. I think that with the state of college basketball at this point, anybody in the top probably 5 to 8, if they have a loss, it could drop them a good piece down, simply because those 8 spots seem to change hands almost daily. So Michigan State had a big win against Northwestern. They had to have it, and they came out and they took it, and now they are in the driver's seat and in control of their own destiny, helped by Michigan's win today over Ohio State. There's not really anything standing in their way except themselves to get that number 1 seed in the NCAA tournament.
Yeah, speaking of the Michigan Wolverines.
For 3, yes, sir!
They smashed the Iowa Hawkeyes 74-59, and then the aforementioned 74-62 at home over the number 8 Ohio State Buckeyes, which was quite amazing. Michigan wanted revenge. It was a big win for various reasons, as Ed Smith pointed out to me privately on Facebook Messenger off the air. And they got revenge against the number 8 seed. Michigan was 22 in the AP poll rankings.
Well, they felt they should have beaten them at Ohio State in the first meeting of these two teams. They were up by 17, kind of the same scenario that the Michigan State-Northwestern game was on Saturday, losing a big lead and ended up losing that game by, I think it was 8 or 9, and they felt that they were the better team overall and let that slip away. Ohio State hung tough, but Michigan just kept on coming on the offensive end, and they were able to get some contributions off the bench. Jordan Poole with a big 15 points off of the bench for the Michigan Wolverines. 3 other starters in double figures, and they played just enough defense to win this game today. Ohio State now probably not going to be in the 8th spot anymore after tomorrow's rankings come out. It'll be interesting to see where Michigan lands, because if you look at their profile, they were 39th in RPI heading into today's game. They only really one signature win, and that's over Michigan State. They've beaten UCLA and Texas, but those two teams, with every loss that they've had in the season, kind of diminishes what Michigan was able to do. So they really needed another signature conference win, and they were able to get it today. I don't know where Michigan's going to fall as far as the seeding goes, because obviously with conference play and conference tournaments still to come, we'll see exactly where they land. But Michigan needed this win in the most desperate way. Ohio State came in looking to sweep the season series and move up on the rankings, and instead they'll go down a couple of notches, and Michigan for sure should go up at least a couple of spots in the top 25. I don't know exactly, like I said, where they're landing, but I would imagine they might be able to get above 20 for the first time in quite some time.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I'm sure Michigan will be back in the top 20 at least. But that's as far as I'm going to go. Jordan Poole, by the way, 4 of 5 from 3-point shooting, and I believe he hit. And Muhammad Ali Abdul-Rahman, one of the other 4 Michigan players in double figures, with 17 total against the Buckeyes. State's home against Illinois Tuesday at 7 on ESPN, and then at Wisconsin Sunday at 1 on CBS. Michigan is at Penn State, Happy Valley against the Nittany Lions Wednesday at 7 on BTN, and at the Maryland Terrapins Saturday at noon on ESPN.
Yeah, the Penn State game is going to be tricky. At Penn State, and Penn State needs every win they can get, and that's a team that's trying to keep its head above water, and they don't have a great profile either, but they come to play against some teams in the Big Ten, and that's not a game that Michigan can take lightly. I think that Maryland right now is kind of on fumes, so if they can get a win over Penn State, they should be able to handle Maryland with relative ease and get into the Big Ten tournament. I don't know what their seeding will exactly be, because everything else has to shake out, but for Michigan, I would say that today's win is probably the biggest one, but you don't want to cancel that with a bad loss in this last week. So you got more work to do. Penn State obviously kind of fighting for their lives, so to speak, and that's a dangerous place to be in, especially since Michigan really right now at this point, I don't know if they're cemented for a good seed in the NCAA tournament, but they really don't want to have to play in a first 4 game. And if they were able to win these next 2, I think that they should be able to safely stay out of there.
Mm-hmm. Then we hit the MAC, the Mid-American Conference. CMU beating Northern Illinois in DeKalb 80-72. Kevin McKay, 33 points off the bench. 33 off the bench. Kevin McKay. And then he led in scoring again in a 72-67 loss at home at McGregor to the Eastern Michigan Eagles with 14 points. Not nearly as much, but 33 points against the Huskies. Kevin McKay off the bench on the road. That is ridiculously high for a bench player. That's got to lead the team in scoring. and it sure did.
Yeah. I mean, you don't expect a guy to come off the bench, but I mean, he played starters minutes. He came off the bench, and then he played for 36 minutes. 33 points, obviously bolstering them to be able to get to the win. And they had a couple of guys in the starting lineup that went out and didn't play as big a minutes as him. But when you got the hot hand, as McKay did, Geno Davis went with that, left him in there, and was rewarded with the win.
Yep. Mm-hmm. Chippewas are at the Western Michigan Broncos Tuesday at 7. Another arch rivalry matchup coming up here in the state of Michigan. And then CMU's at Toledo Friday at 6:30. You got another week after this week in the MAC schedule, the regular season schedule. The Eastern Michigan Eagles just edged the Miami, Ohio Redhawks 58-57 in Ypsilanti before beating the Chippewas in Mount Pleasant 72-67. They're home against Toledo at 7 Tuesday. And then they're home against Northern Illinois, the Huskies, Saturday at noon. And the Western Michigan Broncos, just coming up empty, 85-83 at the Bowling Green Falcons. And then to the NIU Huskies, 75-67 in DeKalb. And of course, as I mentioned before, Western and Central in Kalamazoo Tuesday at 7. And then the Broncos head to Muncie, Indiana, and play the Ball State Cardinals Friday at 9 on ESPN2. That's a very different time, and it's actually televised.
Yeah, it's a TV time, as I like to call it, because typically that game wouldn't tip off at 9 o'clock, but they're going to put it on TV, and they need it to start at that time, so that's what happens sometimes. They're more used to it in football as far as the MAC is concerned, playing games on Tuesdays and Wednesdays to get on some TV exposure, but that tip at 9 o'clock, like you said, it's a little bit of an odd time. It's a tough tip for a college basketball game simply because it's harder to get those students to the arena for a late tip. And, but it is what it is. If you want to be on TV, sometimes you got to do that, and that's what's going to happen.
Mm-hmm. So that's college basketball. Now we transition to pro basketball and the Pistons.
Left sideline, 3 and he answers.
Second game in a row that they've given up 118 points to the New Orleans Pelicans after giving up 118 points to the Hawks the week before. This one at Little Caesars Arena, 118-103 on a Monday, and then on Wednesday they led the Atlanta Hawks by as many as exactly 30 points. They almost blew it. The lead was cut down to as little as 4. They held on by 6, 104-98. And this is the Pistons losing in Atlanta to the worst team in the NBA, and then almost very close to blowing a lead to that same team at home, and that's got to be embarrassing even if you win.
Yeah, it wasn't a great effort, a 4-quarter effort by the Pistons. They were comfortably ahead at halftime, and they thought that they had the game in hand, had a big third quarter, pushed the lead out even farther. And then the fourth quarter, Stan Van Gundy started to empty the bench a little bit. He had 7 guys in double figures, which tells you how much the bench was getting some play. They only played 10 guys in the rotation, but there was plenty of time to be had for those 10 guys. Anthony Tolliver, James Ennis off the bench. Both of them had 11 points. Luke Kennard played 18 minutes, and Jameer Nelson actually played for 15 minutes. So Stan Van Gundy trying to get his guys some rest before the All-Star break, and they were able to nose out that victory. Like you said, a big lead in the second half almost evaporates, but they were able to stanch the bleeding long enough and get away with a win. The Hawks, who had beaten them in Atlanta 2 games prior, got a little jump in their step, but just a little bit too late for them to get the win, and the Pistons go into the All-Star break one game under 500.
Mm-hmm. I believe it's still 27-28 is their record, 9th in the Eastern Conference, behind the Heat and the 76ers. The Pistons played the Celtics at Little Caesars Arena Friday at 7. The Celtics are no longer in first place in the East. The Raptors are. Toronto.
Yeah, the Raptors have made a run, and boy, with all the talk about the Celtics and the Cavaliers in the Eastern Conference the last 4 years, the Raptors have kind of gone unnoticed. Part of that is because of their failures in the playoffs, but playing good basketball right now. They're at 41-16. One thing you got to point to is their inter-conference record. They're 25-7 against the rest of the Eastern Conference, so they're making their bones in their conference play, which means, right now, if you're a team that's looking to play them in the playoffs, that doesn't bode well for you, simply because they've won a lot of games against you and your compatriots. So Raptors playing very good. Celtics and Cavaliers kind of falling by the wayside right now. I think the Cavaliers still, probably the road to the NBA Finals still goes through Cleveland, even though that their regular season play has been pretty uneven. They're at 34-22 right now, but with all the big trades that they made at the trading deadline, getting that lineup solidified and cohesive, I still think the road to the NBA Finals goes through them, regardless of the seeding. It just means that they're going to have to play some more road games in order to be able to do that. The race at the bottom of the standings really is going to start heating up as well, no pun intended, with Miami, Detroit, really starting to separate themselves as the 8 and 9 teams. The 76ers with a little bit more of a lead, but they have 3 games they have yet to play. They are 3 games behind both the Heat and the Pistons, so they've got some more games to play. And when you're talking about more games in the schedule, there's only so many days left, so they're going to be playing some games, probably some back-to-backs, and we'll see how that plays out. But the Pistons and the Heat right now, 1.5 games apart for that last playoff spot. And the Pistons coming off the All-Star break next week, and they'll start right in the fire. They're going to play the Celtics, like you said, the first game back off the All-Star break. And they've got to really start to dig in now, because it's amazing how close they are to the playoffs with 2 losing streaks of over 7 games in this season. And yet they're still a game and a half out of the playoff spot.
Yeah, they can't afford to go into another losing streak, because otherwise, chances are they're going to risk their chances of making the playoffs at all this season. I heard a tweet from Rod Beard on Twitter a few days ago at @DetNews Rod Beard from the Detroit News. Confirmed that the Pistons, #Pistons, have been approved for a disabled player exception for John Lure, who had season-ending ankle surgery. They get around $5.25 million in additional cap room if they swing a trade. Shams Charania was the first to report.
Yeah, when you're talking about post-trade deadline deals, those are, again, waiver deals that guys have to clear through all the waiver teams. It gives them a little bit more flexibility. I think that they would have probably rather had that before the trade deadline expired, but it does give them some room if they choose to be able to take on a contract that maybe some other teams don't want to have to deal with. And if they choose to, or maybe they're forced to make a deal, at least it gives them a little bit more flexibility in that aspect.
Mm-hmm. So there you go. Now we transition from pro basketball to pro hockey in the Red Wings. And the Red Wings are still stuck in mediocrity. After trying to make a push, they beat the Anaheim Ducks 2-1. They went to Tampa and lost to the Lightning 4-1, which is inevitable. And then they went into Nashville and Bridgestone Arena and beat the Predators 3-1. Luke Witkowski scoring his first of the season. Luke Witkowski.
His first NHL goal, and boy, the Red Wings have the Predators' number. They've beaten them the last 7 times they've met, and Peter Mrazek especially has the Predators' number. and he played another outstanding game. And then tonight they lose a heartbreaker to the Maple Leafs. They tied the game midway through the third period. And then
Henrik Zetterberg, the guy who said no to a dying woman that appeared to be Xavier Ouellet's mother.
Yeah, he scores a tying goal, but then they give up a goal with just over half a minute to go to Austin Matthews, and they end up losing that game 3-2 in regulation when they were really hoping probably to get a point out of that. They do what they normally do is they go to their defensive shell, and
good for the tanking system, by the way.
Yeah, it's great for ping pong balls, but it's just frustrating hockey to watch because when you get to the tie game and you're playing a team like the Maple Leafs who have so many offensive weapons, it's only a matter of time before they're going to break through, and they're hoping to stave it off until at least overtime, but they didn't get there, so they get no points for the effort tonight, and the Maple Leafs keep on rolling. Obviously, the Pistons, the Red Wings, far back in the Atlantic standings, not a real shot at the playoffs at all. Just another dagger in those chances tonight with the loss in regulation. The loss to the Lightning on Thursday. They had a busy week. They had 4 games. They had, like you mentioned, the Ducks to start the day before Valentine's Day, and they beat them at home 2-1. So they were starting to make some progress, but when you look at the overall week, they're 500, which is mediocre, which is what they are.
Mm-hmm. And let's talk about Zetterberg saying no to Xavier Ouellet's dying mother. This new article from Jeff Moss, the creator and editor-in-chief of the Detroit Sports Rag, which you can follow temporarily at Barb Rady McCoskey. But I think tomorrow at Jeff Moss DSR is going to be back from its 7-day suspension after that altercation with Sham Shan God, that fanboy blogger for Piston Powered, which is a raving lunatic to me, and quite a shill for the Pistons. But let's dig into this thing here.
Well, I mean, they usually have what they call the dad strip, and they try to do it they've done it every year. I think since Mike Babcock was the coach. I think that they've done that, and the story was that Henrik Zetterberg didn't want the moms to go this year because he wanted to take his dad because he was not sure of what his status is going to be after this year. Perhaps he's mulling retirement. Whatever the case may be, the story goes that Xavier Ouellet, whose mother is gravely ill, he was hoping that they would take the moms this year so he could go with her, which sounds like she may not make it past this year, health-wise. I'm not really familiar with that situation, but what it appears to be is that Zetterberg put his foot down and said, no, we're going to do it my way because I'm the captain. And, it's just another thing that you hear about with Zetterberg and Blashill and this current regime is that Zetterberg really is the guy that's calling all the shots as far as the locker room is concerned. He's the one that makes decisions or tells people to do things against what Jeff Blashill gives instruction for. And if this is indeed true, it's just another black mark for a guy that really, up until he was made the captain, was a consummate franchise player. And since he ascended to the captaincy with the retirement of Nicholas Lidstrom, it's been a vastly different character in the Red Wings story. And for all of the things that have come out, and again, it's never going to be something the mainstream media will report or at least delve into simply because they all like their job, so they're just going to keep talking about how Ken Holland's doing a great job. It just goes to show that this is not really Jeff Blashill's team. It's not really even Ken Holland's team at this point. Henrik Zetterberg making a lot of the decisions And apparently this is another one that he has made or did make. I saw a report somewhere. I have to go back and check exactly where it came from. But apparently he didn't even bring his dad. He brought somebody else on the trip.
Whoops.
So just another thing to throw out there. It's one of those things that if you're on a winning team, that stuff kind of goes away. But when you're a team that's not going to make the playoffs, yet tries to give the appearance that they're trying to compete, and really just kind of flaunting that in the face of the fans instead of trying to rebuild, trying to hang on to some sort of competitive attitude. These are the things that are going to come out. And again, nobody from the Detroit News or Detroit Free Press or any of those places is going to say anything simply because they are, in effect, paid reporters for the Red Wings, even though they're not on the company payroll. It's been made pretty clear that if they are to go against what the Red Wings want to have out there, they're going to be in trouble. So, not something that's going to be reported on in your paper. It's not going to be the first click that you're going to see when you go to the Red Wings website. But, boy, if it's true, it's just a real shame because, you think a captain would extend his leadership and his influence to be able to help somebody out in that situation, and instead he goes the other way. It's really a sad story in multiple facets, and it's another thing that just divides a locker room that doesn't need dividing. You've got a team that's not going to make the playoffs, and they're struggling with an identity right now, and it also gives some ammo for trade deadline rumors. Elliot Friedman from CBC and Hockey Night in Canada tweeted later that they were quietly shopping Ouellet. I don't know if that was something that was a rumor or was actually ended up being a true story. We'll hear later this week that some teams were supposedly kicking the tires on Luke Glendening, and that has also come under some scrutiny to the validity of those claims. So a lot of misinformation or a lot of mixed signals coming out from the Red Wings organization right now. There's some reports now that Ken Holland is by far the favorite to become the Seattle's expansion team entry. Their GM when they finally get everything finalized. And it makes a lot of sense simply because his contract has not been extended past this year. There hasn't been any talk of bringing him back on board past this season. So it makes a lot of sense for him to kind of take a sabbatical. And then when Seattle finally enters play in the NHL as the 32nd franchise, he'll be named the general manager. So all of that said, it's not a great story. It's not something that you like to see. But at the same time, with all the things that have been postulated by Jeff Moss and some other people that follow the Red Wings closely, it's not something that unfortunately is a surprise at this point.
No. And that the worst part about all this, Zetterberg, the point is Zetterberg recklessly did not care about how badly Xavier Ouellet's mom was dying. He just didn't want the moms to come. He just wanted his dad to come, and just because Zetterberg thought about his future and his retirement plans, and his father Goran Zetterberg would never get to go on another vacation with the slappy fan base calls the boys. Oh, but we call them the dead things here.
Yeah, well, you got the trade deadline coming up in 11 days, and one thing I was kind of interested to see, Mike Green was a scratch tonight. He's one of the guys that has been named in a lot of rumors, so that stirred some people on Twitter today that he was scratched from the lineup and saying that maybe he's on his way or maybe a deal's being put in place for him. There's been a couple of trades in the NHL. Teams obviously trying to get out in front of that trade deadline and maybe get some better pricing or some better packages from teams. So the speculation was there that maybe a deal is being worked out for him. I don't know exactly how far I would take those, just because there's still a lot of time for him to be able to be dealt. Some teams right now, or some people are kind of speculating on what teams he might go to, and Tampa Bay is one of those teams that has been pushed to the fore as far as a destination for Mike Green. Tampa Bay has a lot of assets that they can deal. Steve Yzerman's built himself a nice little war chest, and I think that he would be well to get Mike Green. Just another asset to have on that power play. He's a good second, third pair defenseman on that team. If he were able to go to Tampa Bay, and it makes a lot of sense. But at the same time, there's going to be other teams that are going to be bidding for him as well. So just another couple little interesting storylines in the midst of the season.
Yeah, but that's why Steve Yzerman created his own foundation, unlike Ken Holland, who just was too stubborn to make some changes. Steve Yzerman is a developer. Ken Holland is not, and there's various reasons why, but we've discussed this several hundreds of times here on the Michigan Sports Truth, and Jeff Moss discussed that several hundred times at the Detroit Sports Rag and on Twitter at Jeff Moss DSR, who will soon be fresh off the suspension like a day or two.
Yeah, we were talking about the trade rumors. Some other things that are coming up. The Philadelphia Flyers are looking to perhaps make a move for a goaltender, and Peter Mrazek and Jimmy Howard have been bandied about in that simply because they're on a team that is not going to be making the playoffs. There's a report from the Scarf Pavilion St. James that Philadelphia offered a third-round pick for Peter Mrazek. The Detroit Red Wings offered that, and the Flyers declined it. But now one has to wonder with their injury situation in goal if that might change, and that price also might go up since they are a little bit more desperate for some goaltending. So they have some picks that they can give away. They have some extra picks that they've accrued over the time, and they have some that they can use. But I think that if you're looking at what they have available, they have a lot of picks in the very late rounds. They have 4, 5. They've got 2 fifth-round picks this year, and they've got some other picks as well. I mean, a third-round pick for Mrazek at this point, you're giving up on a guy for a third-round pick or a fourth-round pick. I'm not saying the price is going to get much better, but I think that it's kind of funny that for all the things that Peter Mrazek has done and the talent that he does have, that you're looking at giving him away for a rental to the Flyers for what's going to amount to a fringe pick.
Mm-hmm. Yep. Then I mentioned last week Michael Rasmussen at number 49 in TSN's top 50 NHL prospects, and I explained it in not very many words. The Red Wings farm system is still depleted. So there you go.
Yeah, I mean, they don't have a lot of guys that are attractive. I think that whoever comes in is going to have a job because they're going to have to separate the wheat from the chaff and really start to bring some of those young guys up and see what they've got. And that's been this common refrain for the last 3 or 4 seasons for the Red Wings is let's find out what these kids have. They finally got Anthony Mantha up there, and they've proven to be competent NHL players. Anthony Mantha right now is on pace to score 30 goals. And that would be the first 30-goal scorer if he was able to get to that plateau since the 2009 season when they had Marian Hossa, who scored 40. They have not had a 30-goal scorer since then.
There you go.
That just really not only tells you how badly they've struggled with the guys that they already have, but with the guys that they've drafted, they've hit on nobody since then that's been able to get to that plateau. And that tells me right now that they need some help sooner rather than later. And I don't think they have the guys that they can bring up to do that. So it'll be interesting to see if Mantha gets to that plateau. And with that said, they need some help. And I think at the trade deadline, they should be very active. And with teams more tightly packed than ever, I think they could extract some assets from some teams and really try to fill out that farm system and the current roster that they have.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. So, those are all the teams that we've covered. Now it's time for our first segment.
It's time for 5 questions on the Michigan Sports Truth.
Question number 1. Where do you rank Matt Patricia in NFL.com's 2018 head coach hirings list?
Like I said at the beginning, it's tough to say what the rankings are now versus what they're going to be 3 years from now. I think number 2 was satisfactory. I think it was sufficient. The Lions didn't have another guy that they had as a backup plan. As far as anybody knows, they didn't need to use that backup plan. They were able to get the guy that they wanted. And for that, they should get a higher ranking. So I think number 2's just about right.
Yep. I'd say so myself.
Next question.
Question number 2. Which seed should the Michigan State Spartans get in their region of the NCAA Division I men's basketball tournament? Jumping the gun here.
Yeah. We talked about this too. They're the number 2 team in the country. And for them to be considered to not right now be in the front running for a number 1 seed, it just seems kind of funny. Because if they're the second best team in the country, how could they not be a number 1 seed? It just doesn't make any sense. And when the committee came out with their seed release,
there's only one way. Well, there's only one way. If the number 1 team in the nation was in the same region as Michigan State as of right now.
Right. And why would you do that? That wouldn't make any sense. Why would you put the top 2 teams in one region? It would make sense that way, but it just doesn't make a lot of sense. I know the NCAA is trying to make it so that they have more of a regional flavor to get more people to the games, but to basically reward one team with a 1 seed and then take the team that right now is currently ranked number 2 and not reward them with that, that would be lunacy. I don't understand why you would not reward Michigan State with a number 1 seed. I don't think that they would care much if they had to go and play somewhere else, but they would much rather be the 1 seed instead of having to play the number 1 team in a Elite 8 matchup, potentially.
Valid point.
Next question.
Question number 3. Should the Central Michigan Chippewas head coach Geno Davis place Kevin McKay in the starting lineup? It's getting late, but why not? Give Kevin McKay a starting gig, at least for 1 game, right?
Right. At this point, you're not going to be an NCAA team. You're probably not even going to be an NIT team. So we'll see if they get to one of the lower tier tournaments. There's teams that don't play in those for various reasons. That said, when you don't have a lot to play for, why not make changes? And I think that with his latest outburst, you give him a shot and see what happens.
Yeah, 33 points at NIU last week. Man, that's a starting gig effort right there.
Next question.
Question number 4: could the Nelson and Ennis trades negatively affect the Pistons for the rest of the season? They've lost 3 straight since that trade, and then they almost blow a 30-point lead, minimize it to 4. They hang on by 6 against the worst team in the NBA.
Yeah, I mean, I know that Nelson and Ennis were secondary. They got Jameer Nelson to help bolster the point guard position, and tonight's the first extended action he's had. I'm sorry, our last game was the most action he had against the Hawks. They're bench players, and I think at this point, as far as the negative aspect, I mean, their contributions are going to be minimized simply because they're not playing a ton. And so, that said, I don't know if they can really negatively impact the Pistons that much. I think if they're getting to the point where those guys are playing a lot of minutes, other stuff has to go around for that to happen. So you can't really point the finger at them, because at that point you're on your third string point guard and your third string forward. So, I mean, there's a reason why you're in that depth chart, and there's a reason why you're there. So if they're playing a lot of minutes, there's probably other stuff that's hit the fan, and at that point, they're not looking at a playoff spot at all.
No, absolutely not.
Next question.
And question number 5, could the Red Wings end up in mediocrity again this season as of right now? Looks like it as of right now.
You know, I mean, they're at mediocre right now. They're obviously going to be a lottery team. It's going to be interesting to see. This year's draft is a lot different than last year's as far as the players that are available at the top. The draft is always a crapshoot, no matter how much you scout it, and no matter how much you want to sit there and try to figure out who's going to be the best, who's going to be the worst out of those teams. You never really know. The rankings lend you some guidance as what to do, but it's going to be difficult to say simply because you don't know where they're going to end up. And I think that if they're going to make a lot of moves at the trade deadline, they're going to be designed with the future in mind, which means they're going to have more assets. You have a lot of guys at the top of the draft that some teams are coveting, but at the same time, when you go deeper into the prospect rankings, there's just not a lot there. So if you're Detroit, you're really hoping to get into that top 5 spot, so you can take one of those guys like Andrei Svechnikov, Brady Tkachuk, Quinn Hughes, or Evan Bouchard. After that, it gets a little thin as far as what the projected ceilings for those guys are. And when you're talking about guys coming out of Europe, there's not a whole lot there. After Rasmus Dahlin, it's kind of bare. So I think that for the Red Wings, their goal is to try to get as much as they can out of the trade deadline as far as assets. And if they can get that top 5 in that lottery, that will help them a ton.
Mm-hmm. That's going to be a steep hill to fall down from in terms of tanking. In other words, a steep hill to climb to the top 5 draft picks overall in the NHL 2018 draft. So that wraps up our 5 questions segment, and to our entire audience, if you want to answer those 5 questions, just replay that segment portion of this episode and answer them the best you can without going out of line.
Pencils down, everyone. It's time to find out what's your grade.
Got 3 events to grade. Michigan State University signing Mark Dantonio to a 1-year extension. What's your grade, Buck?
I'm going to give it a C+, simply because, like I said, it's a symbolic gesture at this point. The extension just adds another year to the back end of that contract, which was set to expire in 2023. Them throwing another year on, in the long view, it just gives them another year of security. But who's to say what's going to happen in the next 6 years? So, it's probably something that they had in the works for a while, and they finally were able to do it. So I'm just going to give it a C+ because I really don't have a feeling either way.
Yeah, 1-year extension is not that big anyway to top it all off. Event number 2, the Lions hiring Paul Pasqualoni as a defensive coordinator, which I touched on last week's episode.
Yeah, that one's a little bit more complex. I'm going to give that one a C-, and I'll tell you why. I think that Paul Pasqualoni, who has been in numerous places and has a lot of knowledge, Matt Patricia was on that 2001 Syracuse staff with him. That's where he got his coaching start. I understand where he's going as far as the familiarity. I just don't know if Paul Pasqualoni is an NFL defensive coordinator. He's had a lot of experience in the college game, and he's got some ties to Matt Patricia in that coaching tree. But I don't know if Paul Pasqualoni, who, like I said, has made a lot of his bones in the college game, it's a whole different thing as far as calling defensive plays in college versus the pros. So I'm going to give it a C- because I'm not real confident about that. The other thing I can say about that, though, is that Matt Patricia, obviously, as a head coach, he's a former defensive coordinator on the New England Patriots. He's going to have a lot of influence and a lot of input as to what the defense is doing for Detroit. So I think some of the cynicism and the hesitance for people to see Paul Pasqualoni as a defensive coordinator. Matt Patricia is still going to be there pulling the trigger. So we'll see how that plays out. But, the last time that Paul Pasqualoni was a defensive coordinator was the 08-09 Dolphins, and they weren't especially good. So take that for what you can. I think that Matt Patricia got somebody in there that will do what he wants. And for that, like I said, that's why he's getting a C- because it is somebody that will carry out his scheme. But calling plays in the NFL is a far different task than it is as the head coach or defensive coordinator of a college team. And Paul Pasqualoni's been out of the pro game as far as a coordinator or head coach for quite some time.
In other words, no experience whatsoever.
He's got the experience as far as he's done it before, but it's been a long time. Right. It's been a long time. It's been 10 years. So we'll see how that ends up. But I think that Matt Patricia, like I said, is putting somebody in there that will do what he wants to do.
And then another follow-up grade 2 event, the Pistons trading Willie Reed, a reserve scrub center, and Bryce Johnson, a reserve scrub power forward, for Jameer Nelson, a veteran, a point guard, and James Ennis III.
I'm going to give that a B+ because Willie Reed probably wasn't going to be playing for the Pistons at all. So they were able to turn something into nothing, nothing into something. So they were able to get some usable parts for Willie Reed. So I'm going to give it a B+ because they were able to get something. Willie Reed was supposed to be suspended for, I think, 6 games due to a domestic violence dispute. And so they were able to...
That was from last summer.
Yeah, they were able to jettison him off and get people they could use now. Again, you're trading a third-string guy for a couple other third-string guys, so it's not earth-shattering, but they can at least use those guys while Willie Reed sits on the bench and waits for his suspension to end.
I'm going to grade that a C+ or a B-. I'm going to go with a C+. The Pistons had lost 3 straight and then almost blew a lead since that trade to the Atlanta Hawks, and still won, but also take into consideration they still don't have a true backup center. The only center that they have nowadays is Andre Drummond. So
yeah, Eric Moreland has been pretty much persona non grata.
Just a non-center forward, I guess.
Yeah, so at this point, they're just, when they go off of Andre Drummond, they just kind of have to make do. And the one thing I'll say is it would have been great to have a backup center, but when you can't use them for 6 games, it doesn't help you any. So they get the 2 other guys, and they're just trying to, like I said, trying to get some production out of that spot when they were going to have 6 games they weren't going to be able to use Reed.
Right. So that's our What's Your Grade segment. So for our audience, if they have a grade for each of those 3 events, post them in the comment bank in this episode, and please don't go out of line. So that's episode 304 of the Week in Review on the Michigan Sports Truth postgame podcast on Spreaker, SoundCloud, and iHeartRadio. Before we sign up, we want to remind everyone to share this episode and our entire podcast on social media and have their friends share that as well, because we want to tell them the Michigan Sports Truth podcast is searching for a wider local audience that is fans of sports. So please spread the word about the Michigan Sports Truth podcast and its Facebook page. Buck, Geno, awesome job as always. Welcome back. Missed you for a couple weeks. Talk to you next week.
Yes, sir. Thanks.
Yep. I'm Taylor Phillips. Follow me on Twitter at DT2Phillips and Buck Geno III. Buck Geno at Buck Geno III. And like and share the Michigan Sports Truth Facebook page. Talk to you next week on episode 305. Thanks very much for listening and downloading and sharing. TTFN, ta-ta for now. Bon appetit.
And mission complete.